Okay, back again. Mark of the Grizzly by Scott McMillion. This little section here is about 20 pages, so I'm sure I'm a slow reader. This will take at least 2 videos. And I'll keep them as, try to keep them as 10-minute videos. Anyhow, let's jump right into it. This chapter, this section is called Treat It Right. Put yourself in Buck Wild's shoes. That's a name. You're hiking alone in Glacier National Park in Montana, where you find a blue hat lying in a trail. Then you spot a camera on a tripod, laid carefully down, the tripod legs neatly folded, the lens cap on. There's a small red backpack there too, and this makes you suspicious and curious, and you start to pay some serious attention. You move 30 feet or so back to the way you came, and there about 3 feet into the brush you spot the bad news. A pool of blood, a foot or more wide, and still fresh. Then you notice more blood, spots of it leading down the trail, and you see some grizzly bear tracks. Claw marks scratched into the hard, packed ground. You follow them. No. You follow them, making plenty of noise and moving downhill very slowly for about 500 feet until you find a bunch of scuff marks on the trail, a place where something heavy has been swept back and forth a few times. You keep going and you find more blood, then little pieces of what must be human flesh. Give me a second. Human flesh. You find some coins, you find a bootlace, you find more blood, puddles of it, and a blood trail leading into the woods. You have spent a lot of time around bears and you know how dangerous they can be, but you also know they rarely kill people. Somebody is hurt very badly and the blood trail is there, and you have only a can of pepper spray with you, and you know somebody will surely die if you don't help. So you go into the brush where you find more coins and a wristwatch and a boot, and then you find a man lying on his left side. The man is bitten and clawed from head to toe, and the bear has eaten the meat from one arm and one buttock, but his body is warm and he might still be alive, even though you can't find a pulse, and still there is nobody here but you and this dead or dying man. Surely you can do something. So you hustle back to the red backpack, only a few hundred feet, and get a few hundred feet, and get a coat to cover him and keep him warm. And when you get back to him after 5 minutes, the man is gone. Ooh. You get a coat or cover to keep him from going into shock or more shock or whatever. But you come back and he's gone. Not just dead, gone. Smears of blood tell you the bear has come back, probably after watching you follow its tracks, and has taken the man away. So you follow this grizzly trail for a few steps, and you see that it leads into a patch of timber really thick where you can't see anything at all. Put yourself in Buck Wild's shoes. What are you going to do? Not that. That's when I knew I had really, this is in quotes, that's when I knew I had really been more foolish than I had thought I was being. Wild recalls of that day, the 3rd of October, 1992. A sunny Saturday in the high country. I had the pepper spray in my hand the whole time with the safety off. I was scared shitless. That was the point when I made the decision that I was in over my head and I had to get out. It was time to think about myself and other people who I knew were alive. Wild was just off the loop trail, a vigorous 4-mile hike that leads from the Going to the Sun Road to the Granite Park Chalet, a popular backcountry destination. But it was late in the season. The first days of October can be the early part of winter in some years. And as far as Wild knew, there wasn't another person around for miles. Still, it was a pleasant Saturday, only about noon, and there was a good chance that other hikers would arrive soon and walk into an ugly situation. So Wild backtracked to the trail, walked downhill a quarter mile, and pinned a note on the middle of the trail with a small rock. In quotes. A man has been attacked by a bear, end of quote, the note said. Turn around and go back to the highway. Shout and make noise every 100 feet or so. Don't run, but move fast. Send help. I'd like to get that note on the trail. Wild left his bear spray with a note and gave instructions on how to use it. Then he moved back up trail to the chalet, closed at the time, and met some other hikers who had just arrived. He sent them back to Logan Pass, a relatively flat 8-mile hike away, but a place with lots of traffic and a visitor center. The quickest source of help. He gave them a note for park rangers. Help, it said, discovered signs of bear mauling about a quarter to a half a mile downhill from chalet backcountry campsite. Followed another quarter mile and found body. He was in bad shape but alive. Went back to get coat to cover him and body was gone. Met these people at chalet. I plan to stay here for 2 reasons. 1, to turn people back toward Logan Pass Visitor Center. 2, to take National Park Service personnel to site where I saw a victim. He signed the note, seriously, Buck Wild, and asked the hikers to turn back anybody that they met coming toward the chalet. Interesting. After the messengers left, Wild left another note at a second trail intersection, then climbed to the chalet's second-story deck to settle in and wait, scanning the area with his binoculars, looking for bears and watching for any hikers who might be coming in. At one point, he heard a scream somewhere down on the loop trail. He didn't investigate. He had already spent an hour or more too close to a grizzly bear's fresh kill. He already pushed his luck. Enough was enough, I'd say. Wild is an unusual man. 43 years old at the time, he had given himself his name when, at the age 40, he gave up a lucrative career as an electrical engineer and launched a new one in wildlife photography. He spent several months a year in the wild, moving between places like Yellowstone National Park and Alaska, Florida, and Southeast Asia, with periodic stays in his hometown of Julian, Pennsylvania. It's a rough way to make a living, but he's been successful, publishing 10 photo books. He lives a lifestyle he readily describes as eccentric, one that often brings him into close contact with grizzly bears. He's been charged a few times, but never attacked. Wild had walked into the Granite Park area the previous afternoon and spent the night in the backcountry campground. There was no other campers. He hoisted his food high into the air on the food pole there, then went to bed early and slept late. He walked around the area for an hour or so after he got up in the morning, then went back to the campground to fix breakfast in the designated cooking area, which is separate from the sleeping area to keep from attracting bears to the tents. Sometime during the middle of a hot cereal and tea, he caught a quick glimpse of a small grizzly bear. He heard a woof, probably from the cub's mother, and the little bear took off running toward the loop trail. Wild hastily cleaned up his breakfast and raised his gear back up on the food pole. He found fresh grizzly tracks, small ones covering the footprints he had left less than an hour earlier. Grabbed his camera and took off. Let's see. He found fresh grizzly tracks, small ones, covering his footprints he had left less than an hour earlier. Mountain lions out here will do that to you. You go back on your trail and find it where mountain prints are over the top of your feet. Very scary. Lost my place here. Grabbed his camera and took off in the direction he had seen the bear going. It was about 11:30 in the morning. By then, the bears probably had already attacked John Petroni, a 40-year-old jazz buff from Madison, Wisconsin, who had hiked up the loop trail that morning. It was no more than 5 minutes to put the food up the pole, plus another 10-15 minutes to get to that point of the attack. Wild says that's how quickly things unfolded there. In my mind, what happened was the bears came in and saw me and smelled my food. They were looking at it, but did the good bear thing and split when Mama saw one of the cubs getting too close to me and took off running down towards that trail. Wild knows a lot about bears, knows that grizzlies will almost always avoid an encounter with people if they have a chance. He had spent the previous summer guiding photographers to places in Alaska where they could watch up close as grizzlies fish for salmon. Less than a year earlier, a sow had bluff charged him on Kodiak Island after he inadvertently came between her and one of her 3 cubs. She came close enough, charging from 100 feet away, that he could feel her hot breath. And she got there fast enough that he never even had a chance to reach for the shotgun on the ground at his feet. That's when he decided guns weren't much good in a bear encounter, and he hasn't carried one since. I'm going to disagree with that. He studies bear behavior, is a fanatic about keeping a clean camp, and is a self-professed pain-in-the-ass person to go into bear country with. I believe it. You've got to read the bear safety books. You've got to convince me you've read the books. You've got to obey the rules and pay attention. Anytime you're not, I'm giving you shit about it. He was paying close attention as he walked toward the loop trail that morning, mostly because he was hoping for a good photograph. But he wasn't paying much attention to the trail itself. Rather, he was watching and listening for bears. That's when he stumbled across Petrani's cap, then the blood and the other grim evidence of bad trouble. That point in the trail is a narrow corridor between thickish stands of pine, a place where visibility reduces to 20 feet in some places. It is also where Wild started paying even more attention. Let's hold it right there. Catch you in the next one. Love you. God bless.